This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little bit more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. And before I get started with the show, I wanted to let you know that we've got something special going on this month. We're giving away a $50 gift card to Homefield Apparel. Now, Homefield Apparel has premium vintage college gear. Check out their website at homefieldapparel.com. They've got some really cool-looking stuff there. I particularly like the ringside hoodies, but there's a lot more stuff there, too. Check them out and then enter for your chance at that $50 gift card at sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways. Our drawing is coming up in just a couple of days. And now, here's today's episode. It's February 6th, and on this day in 1958, a plane carrying the Manchester United Football Club crashed in Munich, Germany, claiming the lives of 23 people. This Manchester United team was known as Busby's Babes. Manager Matt Busby believed success was more likely with youthful players. He wanted fresher legs and minds that could still be molded in his image. He banked on youth being the key to Manchester United's fruitful future. Busby used the Manchester United Junior Athletic Club to sow the seeds of success, and that youth movement worked, taking a club that had been relegated to lower divisions in the 1930s and was nearly bankrupt to the highest levels of football in Europe. Busby's Babes won an FA Cup in 1948 and won a league crown in 1952. Now atop English football, Busby wanted to dominate all of Europe and in 1957 took his club to the semifinals before losing. Now here on February 6, 1958, Busby's team had just played a match in Yugoslavia, which is now Serbia, against Red Star Belgrade. The plane they were in to fly back to England was not capable of a non-stop flight of that distance, and so stopped in Munich to refuel. There were 44 people on the plane, consisting of players, team staff, journalists, photographers, and the flight crew. The plane was an airspeed ambassador, being flown by experienced former RAF pilots. After taking on fuel, the plane attempted to take off, but the pilot noticed an issue with one of the engines and aborted the takeoff and returned to the hangar. He talked of the engine making a strange noise and a pressure gauge fluctuation. A quick adjustment was made, and a second attempt to take off happened 3 minutes later. This attempt was also aborted, and once again the plane returned to the hangar. The team deboarded and went to the terminal while the engines were looked at again. It started to snow, and there were thoughts that the trip back home would be delayed until the following day. In fact, that was the suggestion of one of the Munich mechanics to keep the plane overnight and tune the engines. But the pilot was anxious to stay on schedule and figured just a different taxiing tactic was all that was needed. A slower speed initially, then a slower increase in the throttle on a long runway would give him the time to build up the necessary speed to take off. 15 minutes after the team had gotten off the plane the second time, they were called back. The plane lined up on the runway and accelerated slowly. Once it reached 134 miles per hour, it passed the point of no return, and takeoff could not be aborted. but 134 was not fast enough to get it airborne. But as the pilots gave it more throttle, the speed dropped to 120 miles per hour instead of increasing. They could not achieve lift, and it was too late to stop it. The plane skidded off the runway, crashed through a fence, hitting a house, a tree, and then a barn full of tires and a fuel truck, causing a fire to erupt.
So far, we know there are 23 survivors after Manchester United's air crash at Munich this afternoon. Of the crew of 6 and 38 passengers on board, including a baby, these are the people so far known to have survived. Matt Busby, manager, and the following players: Gregg, Wood, Folkes, J. Blanchflower, Morgans, Berry, Charlton, Violet, and Scanlon.
The crash was initially blamed on pilot error, but after an investigation, slush on the end of the runway caused the plane to slow unexpectedly, and also the heavy weight of ice on the wings prevented takeoff. 20 people died at the scene, including 8 players, 3 staff members, and 8 journalists. One person died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and 2 others died days later due to their injuries. Now, one of those players was a 21-year-old Duncan Edwards. Busby had noticed Edwards playing as a 12-year-old and spotted his talent immediately. He signed with Man U as a teenager and made his first appearance with the first club as a 16-year-old. After he was rushed to the hospital, the initial prognosis by the doctors is that he would recover, though they doubted he would ever play soccer again. A week after his admission to the hospital, his health had improved dramatically, only to take a turn for the worse a few days later. His strength began to ebb away, and he died on the 21st. His last words were, "What time is the kickoff against Wolves? I mustn't miss that match." 2 players who did survive the crash, Jackie Blanchflower and Johnny Berry, never played football again due to the severe injuries they suffered. Manchester United returned to action without their manager Matt Busby on February 19th in an FA Cup match against Sheffield Wednesday in front of a crowd of 60,000. With 2 survivors of the crash and a group of reserves brought up to the top flight for this match, the Red Devils played with a little extra incentive.
The first goal, direct from a corner. Young Seamus Brennan scores in his first big match. The second half. United settling down now. Their passes are finding their mark just as this hour of trial produces the man. 18-year-old Seamus Brennan gets his second goal. Manchester United 2, Sheffield Wednesday 0. The almost continuous cheering is the tonic those young United players needed. With determination and courage, they're rising to the soccer heights. And another Busby babe, Alex Dawson, crashes in goal number 3. Groups of soccer fans everywhere, yes, even in sporting Sheffield, are there in cold print. The victory cheers are warm and human, raising the hope of continued greatness. The new spirit invades the dressing room. Skipper Billy Folkes and goalkeeper Harry Gregg join their young teammates in a victory.
The rebuilding process was underway. Busby would not be released from the hospital until 2 months after the crash. But when he did leave Munich, he was determined to honor the memory of all those who lost their lives in the crash. It took another decade, but in 1968, Manchester United found themselves playing once again for the European Cup against Benfica in Wembley.
On the showing so far, United were proving the better side. Hard-working Best put the ball out to the left, where Sadler had been playing like a demon. The return centre was a beauty. Charlton headed it home. What a tonic for the fans. United won up in the 55th minute and going all out for another one.
Benfica found the equalizer, and it stayed that way after 90 minutes. In the first 15 of extra time, George Best scored first to put the Red Devils up 2-1. Brian Kidd celebrated his 19th birthday with a header goal off of a ricochet to make it 3-1 Manchester United. And then, as if written in a movie script, Bobby Charlton, one of the survivors of the Munich air disaster, scored the final one.
The Benfica fire had nearly been extinguished. But where United finished, not on your life. Bobby Charlton made it 4-1. Manchester United had well and truly done it. They were supreme soccer champions of Europe. At last, Matt Busby, the maestro of Manchester United, had groomed a team great enough to beat Europe's best. He was king of soccer. His wonderful 11 men were all princes.
A 4-1 win over Benfica with Charlton scoring twice. Many years later, he reflected on that day.
The European Cup, which everybody wanted to win, because they didn't feel that Sir Matt Busby would have had a proper career without having been the manager of a European Championship side. And with everything that happened at Munich, it was important that we did eventually one day win the European Cup.
They had done it. The rebuild was complete as Manchester United became the first English club to win the European Cup. They'd also rightfully honored the memory of all those young men who'd had that same desire a decade before, but never got the chance due to what happened on this day in 1958. That's going to do it for this edition of This Dish. Don't forget to go to sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways for your chance to win a $50 gift card to Homefield Apparel. Check back tomorrow for another This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.